Beverly Welch here at the Arbor Gate in Tomball, Texas, and I'm joined today by my dear friend Angela Chandler of the Garden Academy.
Hi Beverly, I'm glad to be here.
Oh, listen, it's always a joy to have you. The number one selling fruit tree here on the Gulf Coast is citrus.
With good reason. It's so dependable for us.
Absolutely, and it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and it smells great.
It does, it does. So the most asked question that we get is, in the care of citrus, when and how do we prune these guys?
Right. Well, let's kind of take those in order.
All right, perfect.
The when kind of has to do with our weather.
Right.
So citrus is technically a semi-tropical plant. So we want to kind of let them harden off and rest and take care of themselves during the winter time. So we want to wait until at least about the first week of March or so.
All right.
And even then, we sort of want to be weather watchers.
Perfect.
The calendar doesn't always tell us what the weather picture is. So if you know that a freeze is pending, don't do your pruning yet. But by the time we get to mid-March, you're generally safe to be able to prune citrus for us.
All right, perfect. Now, the reasons for pruning citrus are different than our reasons for pruning other types of fruit, like our stone fruit.
They're very different. We prune stone fruit, and we prune the palms like apples and pears for production.
Right.
And each one of those groups has a specific pruning schedule to be able to produce new fruit wood every year.
Okay.
Well, citrus is going to do that on its own. It's constantly growing and constantly setting new fruit wood and new fruit buds. So for citrus, we're mostly pruning for shape and for size.
All right.
So depending on where you've planted it, sometimes you have to keep something down into a contained size.
Right.
A lot of us don't like climbing ladders to harvest our fruit.
Exactly.
So sometimes we prune citrus to keep it down at a convenient level. And then the other reason is for shape. And there, it's kind of a decision as to what do you want your citrus to do.
Right.
So a lot of people, because citrus in our area is evergreen unless we have something really terrible happen.
Well, yeah, just virtually a landscape plant here.
It's great.
Yes.
And so people use them for hedging, for screening, for dividing areas in their yard. So if you're choosing citrus for that purpose, you want it to be full and lush and have that appearance of that big, giant, very thick shrub.
Right.
So in that case, most of your pruning will be tip pruning on the outside to maintain that. When you tip prune, the growth hormone that's naturally in the plant has a tendency to come, it wants to follow the sun.
Yes.
So when you tip prune, that hormone is forced back down into the plant, and it wakens up a lot of dormant buds that are ready to burst out and grow, giving us a fuller plant.
Perfect.
If what you're looking for is, some people like that aesthetic shape where they can actually see the trunk form.
Right.
And in that case, we'll come in and we'll actually thin some of the branches so that we can see the structure. And you'll make heading cuts instead of tip cuts. And a heading cut is removing a branch all the way back to the main trunk, so that you open up the top of the tree. So those are your choices. It kind of depends on what is the particular style that you'd like the citrus to have.
Now, these methods apply whether your citrus is in the ground or you're growing in containers.
Absolutely.
Same methods.
Same methods. And in containers, of course, you're going to want to make sure you keep that plant tip pruned so that you control that growth. You also want to kind of build strong growth. You can see that at planting, a well-shaped citrus doesn't need much pruning.
Okay.
But in the case of something like these, they've already started flushing, getting ready to grow because we've had warm weather.
Right.
And because of that, they've gotten a little top-heavy in one place or another.
Right.
And when we first plant the tree, we might want to make sure that we remove some of that.
Sure.
So it's like in the case right here. These are carefully pruned in the nursery to give that nice full top when they're purchased. And so sometimes that last pruning cut stimulated that hormone, that plant hormone, to throw these extra buds. So now we have 3 branches coming where we really only want one, and it's causing that top heaviness.
Okay.
So here we want to say, okay, at planting, I'll want to get more balance. So I would actually remove this bottom one. We try to remove the hangers because it's prettier at the top. And then I sort of want to look and see which one of these is going to follow the shape of the branch more closely.
Right.
And it appears that actually that middle one is going to do that. So I'm going to remove this one. And it keeps from pulling so much weight here and allows this to grow. And then I might even come back in here and tip prune this one. Not a lot, but just to give it a little more balance. And then this one will end up growing straighter
Growing straight?
and not
Okay.
be quite as heavy.
Perfect. Now, on the Gulf Coast, you know, through our winters, we'll get into periods of very warm weather.
Yes.
And sometimes the trees will go into bloom early. So if it starts blooming
Yes.
before the optimal time to prune, what happens if I cut my flowers off?
Well, let's talk about young plants and then mature plants.
All right.
In a young plant, like say just the first couple of years after planting,
Uh-huh.
that's okay. Go ahead and make your pruning cuts to get the right shape of the tree that you want for the long term.
All right.
The other part to that is that really for the first 2 years after planting, we don't want it to set a lot of fruit anyway. And I know that's always
It's
the
very
hard
hard.
part. It's so difficult. But in all honesty, if you'll remove the fruit the
Right.
first 2 years, the plant spends all of its time building a strong root system. And over the long haul, because citrus is very long-lived,
Right.
over the long haul, you'll have a stronger, more productive tree. And I always tell people, okay, let one or two grow if you just
Right.
want to taste them so badly, but we need to do that. By that time, this tree is going to have some pretty good size on it.
Right.
And even though you may remove a few of those blooms when you do your pruning, you're still going to set hundreds of blooms. You'll actually find that you need to thin some of that fruit.
Right.
It's going to set more. So the blooms that you remove through the pruning process, don't be heartbroken about them. It's okay.
Perfect. So, to cap up everything that we've talked about, we're going to wait until danger of frost has passed.
That's correct.
Because when we prune, we're going to encourage new growth.
We do. And also, for a couple of weeks after pruning, no matter
Right.
when it's done, that tree is a little bit more sensitive to the weather. So we want to make sure that we've really got it into a safe zone.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to tip prune
Mhm.
for a more
For
full
fullness.
shrubby effect.
Right.
And we'll come into the
Trunk.
to the central trunk if we want a more tree-like open
Yes.
appearance.
Yes.
Is that easy?
It's that easy.
Oh, wow.
And you know, the really great thing about it is if
Uh-huh.
you don't have time or you just don't have time to get around to it, you can actually let citrus just grow freely on its own and you're still going to have bounteous fruit. It doesn't require quite as much attention as some of our other fruits
Well,
do.
no wonder it's so popular.
It's so popular.
Thank you so much, Angela.
bet.
It's a pleasure.
It's always so much fun to be here, Beverly.